Hello, this is Beth, and oh my god, Froud's Fairy Oracle. It feels like it's been so long since I've had a chance to do this. Finally getting back to it. It makes me feel really good. So, we have moved out of the singers, finally. We've moved out of the 13 singers, and now we're moving into the she. So, it's kind of going to be a different energy, and you're dealing more with entities now that are not always working for the greatest good. They may plop you on your face to get their point if they feel you're not paying attention to them and hearing what they want you to hear or listening to them. So these guys, you gotta be a little more aware. There's a lot of power that goes on here. And the first card, the Maiden, she's number 14. She's the first card in the she. And she's symbolized by, I didn't get the card. I'll be back with the card, people. Okay, there she is. She's personified in this deck as a baby. And she really brings in the idea of new growth, of new beginnings, of that beginner's mindset. Is one of the things with this deck she really brings in. And when she pops up, you're looking at new beginnings, things that need to be nurtured, things that need to be cared for and growing, not just, oh, here it is, let it happen. It's not energies that you can just leave on its own and expect to happen, because you cannot raise a child that way. You cannot just expect a young child like this to just grow up on its own and be okay. So that, those kind of things go along with this card. And when you're working with her, you really want to think of that new growth. What am I cultivating in my life? How do I want it to look? How do I want to grow it? How do I want to nurture it? Because the more you explore that concept and be curious about this card and how you can use it in your life, the more you're going to get out of it. Because it can bring in that concept of needing to nurture things, but it can also bring in possibly needing a little more inner child time and time to play. And really bringing that in. And she's a card that just recently has started popping up more and more for me. I haven't worked with this one a great deal in the past. So certain cards will come up over and over for you again, and you start to develop a relationship with them that can be very beneficial to you. And she's one, it's like, I know what she means, but she hasn't quite got like that real personal connection for me. I get the inner child stuff, I get that I need to cultivate growth and all that kind of fun stuff. And just, to bringing innocence and laughter, silly jokes, trusting that what you're putting into things is going to come out good because you're growing it, you're nurturing it. You're not just like, oh yeah, I just did it and why didn't it work? Because I didn't do anything after I started the project. And she also sometimes can open up an aspect of being vulnerable and opening up in ways that may not be very comfortable for you at times, and bringing you out and letting yourself be vulnerable at times, but also knowing at the same time, depending on what's happening, you may need to shelter that aspect of self to foster that vulnerability. Does that make sense? Because you can make yourself vulnerable, but there's just times when you probably shouldn't. And we've all been there, those times where we open ourselves up and then get hurt. And in a way, this is allowing yourself to being vulnerable, but at the same time knowing that when you're being that vulnerable, you need to take care of yourself. And sometimes if you're starting to feel it too much, maybe you need to shelter that vulnerable self and protect it a little bit more before you can go out and be vulnerable again. Really, what is growing in your life? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? Very much a card of new beginnings, new starts, spring kind of energy. And the thing too, if you block her off, if you kind of start shutting down that vulnerability and the willingness to foster and care for that within you, and you start shutting down your dreams, you start shutting down the hopes, and what happens is all those things start to become your flaws. That's when you get those niggling little voices that tell you how much you suck coming in. Niggling voices that tell you you're no good. Things you stop planning for the future. You stop having those ideas of, ooh, wow, this is the potential of what my life can be, and start just living. Yeah, and kind of interesting saying this because you get harped on presence a lot, and presence is here within this card, but it also has a present. It's like be in the now, but plan for the future. Is kind of what she does when you're not blocking her. But when you block her, and it's just like you stick to everything that's the same, it's kind of minimal and mundane, and you never break out of that routine, she really you'll get stuck, and it's not a fun place to be stuck in. You're stuck in the kind of the crappy mundane part of the mundane, not the fun part of the mundane or the normal part. So you got to be aware if you start cutting off things like your dreams and your hopes, and you start squashing it down and listening to those little voices in your head that tell you, oh, this is not going to work, instead of saying, what can I do to make this work? How can I nurture it? How can I care for it? So you got to be careful of that aspect of really shutting her down too much. And there's times where you may need to pull back, but a pullback is different from like shutting things off and not being willing to work with her energies of hope and joy and nurturing and bringing new growth into. I'm going to see if we can get her face, because she has, see that beatific smile on her little face? It's like she has that joy. She has that feeling of abundance and safety and security because she's being well nurtured. And when we don't bring that in, pessimism, you get kind of the opposite of this card. And the reverse, the contradicted with it, isn't so fun. Because you start bringing pessimism in and you stop trying to find the good in your life and start trying to find what's bad and ignoring what you need to hear. And when you do that, if you start to not even live now, you may kind of dive into a fantasy life and live in your head instead of living what your life actually is and trying to better that life. You can end up in this little fantasy world and not getting out of it when you start to shut off her energy. And fantasies, in my opinion, have their place in your life, but if that's where you're living your life from instead of a point of actually living your life, then that's not so awesome. And you really need to take a look at what you're doing and decide how you want that. And then you call on this little chick, and she brings in the love, hope, and joy. And you can start nurturing those, fostering them, growing them. So this is very much a card of growth, new beginnings, beginner's mindset, of being willing to see things with new eyes and enjoy life. Just have some fun. I think that's it on the Maiden, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.